I'm not going to tell you why the all-new Honda Civic Tourer is just a practical alternative to the Civic hatchback. I'm going to tell you why I think it's actually the better car. The Honda Civic hatchback is a bit of a Marmite car. You either love the sharp angular design or you hate it. And I'm afraid to say I am in that latter group. But while I think the hatch looks a bit warped and misshapen, the Tourer works for me for some reason. The flowing body indents that run over the wheel arches make the car look bold and assertive, while the window line stoops down at the back of the car to reduce the square effect you get at the back of most estates. The roofline itself doesn't drop away though, and there's heaps more headroom in the back than the hatchback. And this fin-shaped antenna really appeals to the 9-year-old inside me. Look at me, I'm a shark! Inside, it's very much the same story as the Civic hatchback, but there are a few things that I don't like. The seating position is too high. I'm only 5'7" and I have to have it in the lowest position. The sat-nav is positioned too low, so you have to look down to see it. And when you've got all the functionality like cruise control, the steering wheel is too cluttered with buttons. There are nice soft touch plastics around the top of the dash, a chunky steering wheel and a driving position framed by the door panels and this centre console bracket. But what are the things that make the Tourer better than the hatchback? Well, all the improvements start from here backwards. Firstly, there's no rear spoiler across the back window. In the hatch, this is part of the rear light cluster, but all it does is completely restrict rear visibility. The second reason is the boot. It is quite frankly enormous. When the Civic concept was first launched at the 2013 Geneva Motor Show, Honda said they wanted it to have class-leading boot space. That's all fine and good, but at the same time, Volkswagen unveiled the Mark 7 Golf Estate with a whopping 605-litre boot. Honda's managed to beat that with a 624-litre boot. You can fold the rear seats completely flat, and this expands the capacity to 1,668 litres. It is a van. The big boot capacity is achieved in part by the extended body length by 235mm. But Honda's also kept the fuel tank position under the front seats and the torsion beam rear suspension from the hatchback. This suspension takes up less space but compromises comfort and performance. However, Honda's acted on this by introducing a rear adaptive damper system with 3 settings: comfort, normal and dynamic. But does it make a big enough difference when driving? In short, not very much. You're supposed to be able to adapt the rear suspension to the driving environment, but in comfort mode, when you hit a bump, it bounces afterwards, and in dynamic mode, it's just too firm. At all times, there's quite a lot of noise from the suspension as well. It's very crashy and very bangy. It's certainly not as refined as a Volkswagen Golf Estate, and you've got to remember the adaptive dampers are only available on the 2 higher spec models. So what about the engines? Well, there are 2 choices. There's a 1.8 petrol or this 1.6 diesel we're driving. For a small diesel engine, there's actually a good spread of power. There's quite a lot of low down grunt, and in 4th and 5th gear the engine feels flexible. The only problem is it's noisy, and noisy at all times, and it gets even worse when you're accelerating hard. But that said, it should be efficient. It's got claims of 74 miles to the gallon and 99 grams per kilometre of CO2 emissions. We'll have to wait until we get it in our labs to test these claims. In terms of the handling, it's pretty much the same as the hatchback. Because the wheelbase is the same, it doesn't turn in any quicker or any slower, and you don't really feel any advantage or disadvantage of having the additional length at the back. One good thing Honda's done is retune the steering. Now they've made it heavier at the centre point, so it actually feels a bit more involving. It feels more attached to the front wheels, but it's still not as involving to drive though as a Ford Focus Estate. If it was my money, I would forget the hatchback and just go straight for the Tourer. It solves some of the fundamental problems with the Civic, but also has so much more practicality. And because it shares so many of the same parts with the hatchback, it should have the same level of reliability. But there are still some problems with the Civic Tourer. That diesel engine is noisy, the ride comfort is still too bumpy, and even though there's more headroom in the back, there's still not that much legroom. But the question is it as good as its latest rivals? The Mark 7 Volkswagen Golf Estate and the new Seat Leon ST. Click the links below to see our video reviews of the Volkswagen Golf Estate, the new Seat Leon ST Estate, and to find out how the Civic hatchback rated in our full lab test review.